Luka comes back to town, the Lakers game's happening, and you're standing there and there's thousands of people chanting, why shouldn't you be fired?
If you thought the Luka situation couldn't get any weirder, you were wrong. As the fire Nico chants continued to rain down throughout Dallas, he seems determined to get himself fired as Luka continues to thrive in LA. After making the worst trade in NBA history, the Mavs GM seems determined to just make things worse. First, by ignoring the media and fans for months, other than a very strange emergency press conference with Jason Kidd, where Kidd looked absolutely miserable, and now by basically putting on a clinic on how not to handle public relations. First, there was this weird closed-door media session that didn't accomplish anything. He didn't answer any questions truthfully. They really only brought a couple of guys there that they felt like were going to be favorable to them in their coverage, and to be honest, they weren't. They weren't allowed to record. It was very shady, and again, just overall was an example of avoiding the situation in Dallas, not acknowledging the severity of what they did and what more specifically Nico Harrison did by trading away Luka. And now he actually spoke publicly about the trade for the first time since that weird press conference with Jason Kidd right after the deal. And, well, just listen to Nico Harrison himself.
The anger and outrage from the fan base, has that exceeded what you were kind of planning for?
Yeah, good question. I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level.
How is it possible that you can not only be a GM of an NBA franchise, but the GM of the team that has Luka Doncic on the team, a guy that is as immersed, we presume, in basketball as pretty much anybody on the planet? His job is to care about and know the NBA. How does that guy not know how much Luka Doncic meant to the franchise? You could argue that if you looked around the league, that in terms of the best players on every team, Luka means as much to Dallas, or meant as much to Dallas, as any big-time star or superstar in the league. Any guy, you could easily argue he's number one on the list. And somehow, the GM of the team is making the claim that he didn't know, he didn't realize that the fans were going to react this way to trading a guy that is as young as Luka is. It looks like a future superstar, a guy that just led them to the finals 8 months prior to the trade, and he's claiming he just didn't know. And frankly, the Mavs season has gone so poorly, not only since trading away Luka and all the injuries, but just how they've handled the situation publicly, that I actually think it's a real possibility that Nico Harrison might get fired. There's a bunch of reports out there now that the owners are mad at him for not knowing all of this, which is totally fair, and the owners just are not basketball people, which is how you get into a situation where the GM presumably has the unilateral ability to just make this choice on his own and really not consult anybody else. And now the owners are like, we didn't know that this was going to happen either. Now, honestly, to me, that just seems like they're also blaming Nico Harrison a little bit, and he should be getting blamed a lot. But like, you're the owners of the Dallas Mavericks. Like, you don't have to be basketball people, but you're also the people that put Nico Harrison in charge and said, hey, you can do whatever you want. So then to turn around and be mad at him because he made a move that he felt was best, and then either consulted you, or you just didn't care to be consulted, or you didn't understand the situation as a whole. Like, you're the owners of the team. You should probably understand that stuff. And now at this point, their season is over. They went from making the finals last year, they were a couple of games from winning the NBA title last year with Luka at the center of it, to now not even making the playoffs, and Luka continues to look like playoff Luka in LA. And as I said, Nico Harrison might actually get fired. Really quickly though, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Transparent Labs. Now, I don't know about you, but I've tried a bunch of different protein powders over the years, and the reason that I have partnered with Transparent Labs is because it's easy to know exactly what's in it. There's no fillers or artificial sweeteners, just a handful of natural ingredients that you will recognize. Each serving delivers 28 grams of protein exclusively from grass-fed cows, which just gives you a higher quality protein. They also use pure isolate instead of cheap concentrates or blends, which makes it easier for you to actually digest and absorb the protein, with the added benefit of fewer calories per serving and very low lactose. You also know exactly what you're putting in your body because all of this is third-party tested as well. And for me personally, being able to switch up to different flavors is a huge deal. Right now, my favorite is chocolate peanut butter. That's absolutely my favorite. I love that flavor, but there's going to be weeks where I'm going to want to change it up as well. That's another great thing about Transparent Labs. They have a bunch of different flavor options for you to try. And speaking of trying a bunch of different flavors, they're also throwing in a starter kit with every grass-fed protein subscription, which includes a shaker bottle and a variety pack of 5 single-serving pouches in their top flavors so that you can try all 5. So if you want high-quality grass-fed protein where you know exactly what you're putting in your body and is third-party tested and has a bunch of different flavors, Transparent Labs is the place for you. So make sure to click the link or scan the QR code to get this offer while supplies last, when you get that starter kit with your new grass-fed protein subscription. And thank you again to Transparent Labs for sponsoring this video. Now back to Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks. He has said in in this press conference that obviously he didn't know that the situation was going to go as badly without Luka, the injuries, and he feels like overall he's done a good job in his time as the GM of the Dallas Mavericks.
Why shouldn't you be fired?
One, I think I've done a really good job here.
And if you go throughout some of the moves that he's made in terms of the roster that they currently have, a lot of them do point back to his tenure with the Mavs. He drafted Derek Lively, moved back from 10 to 12. Cason Wallace goes to OKC. Lively goes to Dallas, and people were kind of indifferent on the pick at the time. Lively was a little bit disappointing in his freshman season, and people just didn't really know what to make of him as an NBA player. And Harrison saw the vision of a guy that is just going to be a really, really high-level, high-impact role player 5 that's going to be perfect within their roster. He also, at the 2024 deadline, completely turned their season around by adding Daniel Gafford and adding PJ Washington. And the Washington move specifically, I was not a huge fan of, and not to mention the fact that they were a few months removed from bringing in Grant Williams in the offseason as basically what PJ Washington has become for this team. They thought that was going to be Grant Williams. They got him in a sign and trade from Boston. That ends up not working out. They add PJ Washington, and from that point on, once they had Luka and all those role guys and the size in the front court, they became one of the best teams in the entire league, and of course ultimately make the finals. So he does get credit for that. And then going back even further than that, the Kyrie trade was a huge risk at the time. He was forcing his way out of Brooklyn. There weren't really many teams around the league that were all that excited about trading for him, as evidenced by the trade package that Kyrie went for. And that has all worked very well as well. So all those things together, I could see how Nico Harrison could point to his tenure as GM and say, I have done a good job. I traded for Kyrie. I traded for Gafford and Washington. I drafted Lively. There's some other moves here as well that have worked well on this roster. But the bottom line is all of that stuff gets canceled out when you trade away Luka. And it's not just the Luka trade in general. We all understand, it's been said a billion times, that the value made no sense. It made no sense to trade Luka in general, what he meant to the team, what he meant to the franchise, all that stuff absolutely makes sense. However, when you consider the context of the team, and you think about how they built the team that we just talked about, all those good moves that Nico Harrison made, adding Daniel Gafford, adding PJ Washington, adding Kyrie Irving, that stuff took future assets from Dallas. They had to trade away future first-round picks to get all these guys on the roster. They traded a pick swap for Grant Williams. They traded a first for PJ Washington. They traded a first or two for Kyrie Irving. They used future draft capital to build the team. It's not like he just lucked into some guys in the second round and drafted so well and they built this real great homegrown team. No, he had to go out and use draft capital to get those guys. And all that makes sense when you have Luka on the roster, when you have 25, 26-year-old Luka, who's going to be one of the best players in the league for at least the next couple of seasons. It's okay to trade away your 2027, 2029 first-round pick for Kyrie Irving, for PJ Washington. All that stuff makes sense because you have the insurance policy of Luka, that even if the roster completely falls apart, you have him if he's healthy, then you're going to be totally fine in those years. So within that context, then you trade away Luka, and it just makes that move so much worse and basically makes all those previous moves void, because in a scenario in which you had Anthony Davis injury prone, Kyrie Irving injury prone, and then you trade away future first round picks for Washington and Kyrie in this example and Grant Williams, then all of a sudden those trades don't make any sense because of the possibility of losing those first round picks and giving up a ton of value because your team just isn't good because now all of a sudden everybody's hurt. So that really is the thing that I would point to when he says, I feel like I've done a good job here. Everybody's going to point out the Luka trade specifically, but in the context of how he built the team and the moves that he feels like he's done a good job of don't make any sense if the end point is, let's trade away Luka Doncic. And at this point in April of 2025, I frankly would be surprised if Nico Harrison is the GM of the Dallas Mavericks in a year, because Kyrie Irving is probably not going to return until after the All-Star break next year from his knee injury. Anthony Davis is going to have his random spurts of the year where he's missing 10 to 12 games. They're probably going to win like 40 to 45 games next year, not do a ton in the playoffs, and they're going to be a year and a half removed from the Luka trade, and the franchise is going to realize that everything bad that has happened to them since they traded away Luka has everything to do with the Luka trade itself. They're going to owe future first-round picks. They're going to have aging veterans on their roster, Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, that you can't count on to be healthy, one of which is coming back from a severe knee injury, and they're going to realize that the fans were right the whole time, that they should have fired Nico the minute he decided to trade away Luka Doncic. And when he came to them with the idea that, hey, I've got this trade with the Lakers, I'm going to trade Luka to them, they're going to give us Anthony Davis and some stuff, that moment right there, that's when Nico Harrison should have been fired.